Brexit is short for a British exit and refers to Britain leaving the European Union. This has a major effect on sport in the UK, as they are no longer allowed to participate in the free movement of labour implemented by the European Union. There is a fundamental divergence between the philosophies of the English FA and the Premier League. The former is responsible for England's success on the national stage and is therefore constantly promoting the development of English youth within the league, whilst the latter prioritizes building squads of the highest caliber to compete within England and with European giants such as FC Barcelona and Real Madrid. This conflict of interest is reflected by the following statistic: that 349 of the 515 players registered at the start of the 2016 season were non-British. That is nearly 68%, a number that, coupled with the English national team's recent run of mediocrity, undoubtedly keeps the FA chairman, Greg Clark, awake at night. Due to the predominant presence of international players, the Premier League has become a suitable example of a concept called super diversity, where the game is dependent on migrants drawn from a variety of countries. This dependency is shown in the table, as last season's champions Chelsea and this season's winners Manchester City both have close to 80% of non-British players in their first teams. These teams reinforce existing distributional patterns by adhering to current demographic trends when scouting and recruiting players. This makes it even more difficult for next generation of British youth to break through. Brexit will likely force these top teams to change this unsustainable approach by changing scouting targets, forcing them to sign less EU players such as Andreas Christensen and Leroy Sané shown below. Financially, Brexit will take a toll on the Premier League. The sharp devaluation of the British pound since the referendum has made it more expensive for British teams to pay transfer fees to other teams across the world. This could make Premier League clubs unsafe investment opportunities. Additionally, a large portion of internationals in the Premier League have commitments and families abroad. If they plan to or are currently moving earnings offshore, the devalued pound will make their income worth less abroad, making the Premier League less likely to sign foreign superstars such as Neymar in the future, while simultaneously promoting the departure of current stars. The devaluation of the British pound would divert talent into opposing European leagues and could possibly spark the revival of sleeping giants such as Inter and AC Milan. This would attract international broadcast packages away from the Premier League, whilst also urging local broadcasters within the UK to pay less money for rights. The league currently boasts a TV rights deal valued at $2.6 billion, yet Brexit will warrant a dramatic decrease to that number. According to Arsene Wenger, coach of Arsenal Football Club, it would hinder Premier League revenue and leave the league a mere shell of its previous self. The impact on the prevalence of foreign youth in the Premier League will be substantial. Currently, Premier League clubs are allowed to sign 16 and 17-year-old prospects from EU nations and train them within their own academies. However, this may be disallowed post-Brexit due to free movement restrictions. This provides rivals within Europe's top leagues a 2-year head start on scouting and recruiting prospects, without the threat of competition from prestigious teams such as Manchester United and Liverpool. The talented youth of the sport will no longer seek employment in the UK, as they opt for more approachable leagues. These restrictions could also force Premier League clubs to narrow scouting networks to a limited area, and could possibly lead to hostility, bribery, and tapping up, such as Liverpool were recently accused of, to oust competition and successfully recruit English prospects. Incidents such as this would only serve to damage the credibility of the Premier League. Previously, and as of now in the transitioning phase of Brexit, the UK government requires non-EU and EU footballers to receive a governing body endorsement from the English FA before applying for a visa and work permit. Conditions by which players automatically qualify for the GBE rely on a minimum number of appearances on a national team depending on ranking. These restrictions are expected to be tightened after Brexit, which would hinder the ability of Premier League teams to build squads. This short clip describes the criteria.
During the Brexit campaign, it was quoted that around 200 players at top-flight clubs in the UK wouldn't have received work permits had Brexit occurred earlier. Amongst these players are Anthony Martial and, man of the moment, N'Golo Kante. The current rules that apply to non-EU players requesting a work permit are as follows. A player from a top 10 nation has to have played in 30% of their games in the 2 years prior to the date of application to be granted a work permit. A player from a nation ranked 11 to 20 must have played in 45% of international games. And that percentage rises to 60% for the next 10 countries, and finally, for nations ranked 31 to 50, is 75%. If a deal isn't brokered with the EU about the free movement of workers amongst European countries, which allows any EU national to work and live in any EU country, then the work permits would be required by any player from outside of Great Britain.
Premier League teams with less financial pull often practice buying in potential and selling for profit. After Brexit, these players are less likely to have matched international appearance requirements and therefore are unlikely to obtain work permits. If these rules had been in place 2 years ago, Leicester City would not have been able to sign Riyad Mahrez and N'Golo Kante, two players who were monumental to their historic and heavily marketed winning campaign. Immigration restrictions also have led to inflated prices of established English players, making it more likely that the richer top 5 teams will recruit them, leaving behind nothing for smaller clubs. Due to this, competitiveness, an attribute boasted for years by ambassadors of the league, will be hard to come by after Brexit, as the Premier League will turn into a predictable and boring venture. Lastly, with the restrictions on signing foreign players, the Premier League will have no choice but to take a retrospective look at its own youth system and hopefully create a platform through which more British players can compete at the top level. This would make the league more sustainable in the long run. Today, the Premier League has both superstar athletes and financial power, but with Brexit looming over the league, the renowned franchise may soon be forced to concede both these attributes due to the political and logistical transformation that is Brexit.